Dodaj łapkę w górę i subskrybuj nasz kanał. Pozdrawiamy, Illuminati Team.
Wealth of laboratory evidence that these anti-tumor properties kill cancer cells in a variety of ways. There are multiple mechanisms of action identified by which cannabis kills cancer cells, and they're divided into various categories. And among these are anti-proliferative effects. Normally, that's one of the hallmarks of a cancer cell, is that it just keeps reproducing. So if you stop the reproduction, that's an anti-proliferative effect. There are anti-angiogenesis effects, and this means that the cannabinoids will stop the tumor from being able to elaborate or grow new blood vessels to support the growth of the tumor. There are anti-metastatic effects, and that is simple enough to mean that the cannabinoids block the ability of the cancer cells to spread into other tissues. And there's another effect that has a wild name, apoptotic effect. Apoptosis refers to the ability of cannabinoids to speed the death of the abnormal cells. That's something that is especially important in cancer, because you're able to hasten the death of the cell without disturbing the normal cells around it.
Seth Research Laboratories in California have recently demonstrated that in some tumors, cancer cells are killed by marijuana, while the other healthy cells are left untouched. Cells that stop moving and become still white dots are dead cancer cells. The ability of cannabinoids to kill bad cells while protecting healthy ones is particularly important when we're talking about brain cancer because of the so-called blood-brain barrier. The brain has to be sheltered from outside influences that might hitch a ride on the bloodstream and cause havoc. What is exciting and unique about cannabinoids is that they can pass through the blood-brain barrier because of their slippery, fat-loving nature. Cannabinoids get right into the brain's cancer cells by moving easily through the cell's membranes, which are also composed of lipids. The evidence is piling up in mice-infested labs that the endocannabinoid system, when stimulated by cannabinoids, has an anti-tumor effect and can instruct cancer cells to commit suicide.
This was done by Manuel Guzman's group within the past less than 10 years, and what they showed there was that originally that THC, when injected into a brain tumor in mice and rats, a significant number of those animals the tumor would regress and disappear, so that you actually had survival of rats that would otherwise die. And they examined all the surrounding nerve tissue, and that was all fine, because remember, once again, cannabinoids protect nerves.
Dr. Manuel Guzman is a professor of biochemistry and molecular biology in Madrid, Spain, and is known for his groundbreaking studies on medical cannabis.
Hemos observado que los cannabinoides tienen un efecto inductor de la muerte de las células tumorales, un efecto inhibidor de lo que es el crecimiento, la multiplicación de las células tumorales. Lo que hacen es disminuir el crecimiento de los tumores.
If cannabis might be the miracle cancer cure that everybody's been searching for, then why don't doctors everywhere know about it?
People have a hard time believing that cannabis can have all of these fantastic effects that are described. But what we're doing is we're just stimulating a natural system that's already there. This has been developing for hundreds of millions of years. The invertebrates, the sea squirts, the hydra, there are primitive endocannabinoid systems in those organisms dating back 600–700 million years ago. The cannabis plant came along maybe 50 or 60 million years ago.
Why aren't billions in funds being directed toward cannabinoid research by the organizations that raise money for cancer therapies?
We're talking about medical research that, it's really a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I'm thrilled that there's really more research taking place now, really, than any time in history when it comes to the therapeutic use of cannabis, and specifically the cannabinoids, the components in cannabis. Unfortunately, a lot of that research is still relegated to taking place overseas. We see a little bit now finally taking place in this country, but really the United States remains fairly well behind the curve when it comes to cutting-edge medical cannabis research.
One of the first labs to demonstrate basically that not only the immune cells, the normal immune cells express these cannabinoid receptors called the CB2 receptors, but also that when these immune cells get transformed and they become cancer, to our surprise, we found that these cancer cells continue to express these CB2 receptors.
This was an exciting discovery because the CB2 receptor can act like a target for the cannabinoids. Once they bind with the receptor, they can tell the cancer cell to die.
So basically telling the cells basically to commit suicide, and that's what they do. And we demonstrated that that would be the mechanism by which the cannabinoids can kill the cancer, and therefore it can be used effectively as an anti-cancer agent.
Dr. Nagar-Katti and his researchers were able to eradicate almost 100% of the cancer in test tubes, but they were skeptical they would see similar results when they moved on to tumors in mice.
To our surprise, we found that almost 25 to 30% of the mice completely rejected the tumor. They were completely cured. And in addition, we found that the remaining mice also, there was a significant reduction in the volume or the size of the tumors as well.
The lab results have been so promising that Dr. Nagar-Katti is beginning clinical trials with leukemia patients. There's no doubt in his mind that the cannabinoids, either from the plant or lab created, will play a major role in medicine in the future.
I feel that in the next 5 or 10 years, there is going to be exponential growth in cannabinoid research.
It's an area where both the critics and the advocates agree. Scientists are now well on their way to developing medicines based on the cannabinoids. It begs the question, however, will modern medicine eventually make the marijuana plant obsolete?
No, it will not. In fact, it will only enhance it. Okay, because now it's more proof that the plant really does work. Okay, and instead of spending $600 a month on buying the pharmaceutical drug, I can grow my own plants.
I don't want them to ever take the choice away because I don't know how long it's going to be before they really find out exactly what is working for me or for others. And right now, having the raw plant available is the best solution because you have all of it there. You don't have just what they've isolated, just what they've decided is important now.
Let's keep it in the corridors of science. Let's keep it in the FDA. Let's do what needs to be done, which is careful, longitudinal, placebo-controlled, crossover, head-to-head studies, and see where it falls out. But let's deliver what's really medicine. That is the individual cannabinoids.
They may come across some things that are better than herbal marijuana for one thing or another, and good luck to them. I'd love that. But I never want to see compromised the capacity of people to use herbal marijuana, whether it's because the drug that they've come up with is much more expensive, or it doesn't do as well, or whatever the reason, that people should always have herbal marijuana available to them without any constraints from the law.
Patients say for now the question is irrelevant. Science has not yet given them the opportunity to choose between an effective pill or the plant.
This is something where I have no other medical.
What is the evidence that marijuana smoking, habitual marijuana smoking, can lead to lung cancer? With respect to the development of lung cancer, we found no evidence of any increased risk of lung cancer occurrence in association with marijuana smoking alone. The marijuana smokers, if anything, had a reduced risk for developing lung cancer. Not a significantly reduced risk, but reduced less than one-fold, so that means reduced. Whereas the tobacco smokers had a markedly increased risk. If those who smoke more than 2 packs a day had a 20-fold increase in the risk. That's 2,000%. Those who smoke from 1 to 2 packs a day had an 8-fold risk. It's 800%. So that contrasts with no risk, no increased risk, or a slightly reduced risk with the marijuana smokers. THC actually has an anti-tumoral effect. And these are studies that were done both in experimental animals and in cell culture systems, and for different kinds of cancer. For lung cancer, breast cancer, thyroid cancer, prostate cancer, gliomas, brain cancer, that the development and growth, or the growth actually of the tumor is suppressed by THC, and metastases are also suppressed. So how can that be? Well, THC impairs protein synthesis, and it's what we call anti-mitogenic or anti-proliferative. You need, so tumor cells don't as readily proliferate in the presence of THC. They're also anti-angiogenic, so they interfere with the growth and development of new blood vessels that are necessary for metastatic spread. And they also are pro-apoptotic. What is apoptosis? Apoptosis is programmed cell death. So when cells age, there is a mechanism whereby the cells die. It's a non-necrotic death to die off the old cells, and we get rid of them before they have an opportunity to develop mutations that would lead to cancer. So enhancing apoptosis diminishes the risk of the cells becoming cancerous. So marijuana turns out, THC rather, turns out to be pro-apoptotic. So those appear to be the mechanisms that might account for these anti-tumoral effects of THC. We decided to do our own case-control study, funding from the National Institute on Drug Abuse, which is a major funding agency for marijuana-related research. This was the largest study ever conducted on this subject. It was very well designed. We used the Los Angeles Tumor Registry to identify, rapidly ascertain all the cases of lung cancer and head and neck cancer that were diagnosed in the LA County system. And of course, by the time we got to some of them, they'd already died or were too sick, but we got to it, over 60% of them who agreed to participate and were able to participate. And we administered this questionnaire, and then we matched them to controls, the same age, socioeconomic status, that lived in the same neighborhood, using an algorithm that USC developed for this purpose, so that we could match, we're comparing apples with apples. And then we administered this detailed questionnaire, the food frequency questions, occupational history, all kinds of things. We also did molecular, we got a buccal smear so we could look at the DNA, we look at the genetics of lung cancer. So what we did was to recruit smokers, heavy smokers of marijuana, at least a joint a day for a week, and it ended up that the average smoker of marijuana whom we recruited smoked 3 joints a day for about 15 years. And we also required that they smoke that much for 5 years. But on the average, they smoked 3 joints for 15 years. So that's about 45 to 50 joint years. A joint year is the number of joints smoked times the number of years smoked. Over the study population was, I think, between 35 and 59. I think 35 was a younger age group. Of course, we thought that they had to be teenagers in their early 20s at the time of at least in the marijuana epidemic, which was in the mid-60s. So prior to that time, very few people used marijuana, but after that time, it just mushroomed up to 1979, which represented actually the apex, the acme of use of marijuana in our society. So that's why we chose those age limits. And so what did we find? For any category of cannabis use, including heavy use we define as more than 10 joint years, but we looked at 20 joint years and 30 joint years. For every category of marijuana use, the ratio was less than 1, meaning reduced risk. It wasn't significantly reduced, but it was reduced. And the confidence intervals were not that wide, around the point estimate. So there was no evidence, and we controlled for all the known or putative factors, for socioeconomic status, concomitant tobacco smoking, alcohol, etc. the same time when we did a similar analysis for the tobacco smokers, there was a huge effect of tobacco.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Good job. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Good job.
I cannot tolerate the prescription medication for Parkinson's disease. They make me feel extremely unwell. What I'm going to do now is to self-medicate with some marijuana and then come back after 20 to 30 minutes to show you the difference. Okay, it's now 20 minutes since I self-medicated with approximately 30 milligrams of marijuana, which is just a small pinch. Taken using a vaporizer. And you can see that my tremor has calmed down significantly. In fact, it's almost completely under control. The sense of relief is overwhelming.
There's a specific seizure type called a tonic-clonic or a grand mal seizure. This occurs when basically the child falls on the ground, they start convulsing violently. These seizures can go on upwards of 5 minutes, which is called a status seizure. These seizure types are lethal, so when you see children die of epilepsy, it's usually from a status seizure.
Okay, buddy. So how many people have you tested this with so far? How many families?
We've given it to 5 families so far, and all 5 families reported back amazing results. They said that it worked faster than the pharmaceutical rescue meds and with none of the side effects. Typically, these rescue meds, benzodiazepines especially, Diastat, when administered rectally, sometimes it pulls the kid out of the grand mal seizure, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, they have to call the ambulance. And when they do finally come out of the seizure, they're in a state known as zombie.
You're all right, buddy.
Dave Douglas having a seizure. His first toke. Notice the palsy. Notice his shaking. Now, give him another one. Give him another one.
There you go. Dave. Inhale, bud.
Okay, both hands are stopped shaking. See, we're like 60 seconds in. Dave stopped shaking. Another toke.
Get it in. Doing all right, bud.
You able to hold the joint yet? Not yet. When he comes out, I bet he'll be able to hold the joint.
Oh, he'll be holding that joint before it's done.
That's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Still pretty shaky.
It's doing really good, actually.
Oh, yeah.
We're like 2 minutes in.
There we go. He's holding the joint. Yay!
There you go.
Way to go, Dave. Coming back. Oh, that's not good. Get him a bucket.
Please?
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah. Pee myself. I hope I didn't pee myself. No, you're doing okay.
Yeah,
If you need to puke, you just lean right over into that bucket, buddy.
You'll be fine. You're not gonna puke. You're getting some good medicine there.
Look at this, not even 2 minutes and he's holding the joint.
He's holding the joint, that's alright. But don't you find that kind of ironic? I mean, we were talking about, oh, you ought to film one of my Caesars one day. And then he just has one like half an hour after you talk about it.
Czy konopie mogą być rośliną, która uratuje planetę? Jest to najlepszy środek czyszczący do zanieczyszczeń gleby, która obejmuje odpady radioaktywne. Najczęściej zakazana roślina może być przetworzona w tkaninę, papier, makaron i paliwo, ale teraz naukowcy odkryli bardziej subtelne i zadziwiające zastosowanie. Konopie mogą pozbyć się radioaktywnych zanieczyszczeń z gleby. Wykazano, że konopie przemysłowe, popularna nazwa odmian konopi o niskiej zawartości THC, uprawianych do celów niezwiązanych z lecznictwem, są wyjątkowo biegłe w zasysaniu szkodliwych chemikaliów z gleby, dzięki czemu dawne miejsca rozlewu radioaktywnego stały się żyzne i bezpieczne jeszcze raz. Zwykle gleba niezdatna do użytku, która została usypana metalami ciężkimi lub materiałem jądrowym, jest utrwalana w procesie zwanym rekultywacją, która obejmuje wysiewanie na ziemię chemikaliów, które pożerają trucizny. Pomyśl o tym jako magnesie, który zbiera drobne kawałki z metalu unoszących się w szklance wody. Rozwiązanie nie jest jednak tanie, to przemysł wart miliardy dolarów. Wszystko to może jednak nastąpić w sposób naturalny i znacznie mniej kosztowny, dzięki tak zwanej fitromediacji. W fitromediacji korzenie roślin takich jak konopie kopią głęboko w skażonej glebie i poprzez naturalny proces wzrostu zasysają szkodliwe substancje chemiczne wraz z pozostałymi dobroczynnymi składnikami odżywczymi. Te zanieczyszczenia są całkowicie usuwane z ziemi i przechowywane są w rosnących roślinach. Naukowcy z Uniwersytetu w Colorado spędzili dziesięciolecia zastanawiając się, w jaki sposób rośliny mogą pomóc w oczyszczaniu gleby. Link podaję poniżej. Zawsze pojawia się coraz więcej badań, ale konopie zostały skierowane w centrum zainteresowania fitromediacji, ponieważ ma kilka genetycznych zalet, które sprawiają, że idealnie nadaje się do pracy. Roślina ta może rosnąć do 2,5 metrów pod powierzchnią ziemi, zapewniając glebie głębokie oczyszczenie. Konopie osiągają pełną dojrzałość w ciągu 6 miesięcy i nie są niszczone przez zanieczyszczenia gleby. W porównaniu z chemiczną rekultywacją, konopie są znacznie tańsze, a następnie można je zebrać i wykorzystywać jako plony. Konopie wykorzystywane są jako paliwo w silnikach na biomasę, przetwarzane na izolację lub papier. Prawdopodobnie nie należy go jednak palić ani jeść. Konopie przemysłowe są już stosowane jako fitromediator w silnie zanieczyszczonych obszarach na całym świecie. W jednym mieście w południowych Włoszech nastąpił upadek rolnictwa i hodowli zwierząt, po tym jak miejscowa huta zanieczyściła ziemię na obszarze wielu kilometrów. Pasterz tam został zmuszony do eutanazji swojej 600-osobowej trzody, więc zajął się sadzeniem konopi, które odtąd stale czyści swoją ziemię. Najsłynniejsze zastosowanie konopi jako sposobu oczyszczania i ożywiania gleby mogą być skutkiem najgorszych katastrof ekologicznych współczesnej epoki. Wypadek w Czarnobylu czy w Fukushimie może odnieść korzyści z detoksykacji gleby dzięki konopiom przemysłowym. Naukowcy pracujący w Czarnobylu w latach 90. XX wieku donieśli, że konopie są w stanie usunąć metale ciężkie z gleby. Zdumiewające jest, że jedna roślina może oczyścić najbardziej niebezpieczny materiał, jaki ludzkość kiedykolwiek stworzyła. Marihuana dosłownie ratuje ludzkość przed samym sobą. A teraz dzięki złagodzeniu rządowych ograniczeń dotyczących używania i uprawy konopi indyjskich, praktyka może zostać rozszerzona na zanieczyszczone tereny na całym świecie. Na przykład Uniwersytet z Virginii, położony stosunkowo blisko terenów, które zostały zatrute przez kopalnię węgla kamiennego w całym regionie, nawiązał współpracę z firmą biotechnologiczną w celu genetycznej modyfikacji roślin konopi. Projekt ten może doprowadzić do ogromnej ilości odzyskanych gruntów, które można by wykorzystać do celów rolniczych. Pomysł jest prosty. Największy problem dla tego potencjalnie światowego rozwiązania są przepisy rządowe. Uprawa konopi jest nadal nielegalna w Japonii, co bezpośrednio wpływa na to, jak szybko mogą przebiegać porządki wokół elektrowni jądrowej Fukushima. A w Stanach Zjednoczonych półlegalność marihuany sprawia, że wszystko od testowania roślin po zabezpieczenie pożyczek na badania jest trudniejsze niż konieczne. Dodaj łapkę w górę i subskrybuj nasz kanał. Pozdrawiamy, Illuminati Team. Przypominamy, że na naszym kanale nie ma płatnych reklam i jeżeli uważasz, że robimy coś wartościowego, to możesz wesprzeć naszą pracę poprzez datek dowolnej wartości. Możesz też nas wspomóc, odwiedzając sklep partnerski Illuminati Wear, który oferuje odzież, literaturę dla wszystkich przebudzonych. Jest to świetna forma wyjścia z przekazem poza internet. Linki znajdziesz pod filmem. Pozdrawiamy, Illuminati Team.